India just made a $5 trillion bet that could change everything. But here's what the headlines won't tell you. Behind every gleaming new airport and record-breaking bridge, there's a pattern emerging that nobody wants to acknowledge. A pattern of collapse, delay, and disaster that's becoming impossible to ignore. While the government celebrates building 37 kilometers of highway every single day, bridges are falling into rivers at an alarming rate. While they announce the world's largest airport, expert warnings about safety go completely ignored. This is the story they don't want you to hear. The real story behind India's infrastructure revolution. The Mumbai to Ahmedabad bullet train was supposed to change everything. India's first high-speed rail corridor. 508 kilometers of cutting-edge technology connecting the country's financial capital to its industrial powerhouse. The promise was incredible. Trains hitting 320 kilometers per hour, that's nearly 200 miles per hour, cutting a 7-hour journey down to just 2. Japan's legendary Shinkansen technology, the same system that's run flawlessly for decades, being brought to Indian soil. The project included engineering marvels that would make any nation proud. 21 kilometers of tunnels carving through mountains, with one tunnel alone stretching 7 kilometers deep beneath a mountain range. We're talking depths of 250 meters, deeper than a 70-story building is tall. 24 river crossings, including a 1.4-kilometer bridge over the Narmada River designed to handle trains moving at those incredible speeds. The total investment was set at $17 billion, and when it was announced, the completion date was 2022. That's right, 2022. This was supposed to be operational 3 years ago. But here's where the story takes a turn. That 2022 deadline came and went. Then it became 2026. Now, if you check the latest updates, they're talking about 2028, maybe 2030, almost a decade late. And the costs have exploded beyond anyone's initial calculations. The Japanese government, who's funding a massive portion of this through soft loans, has raised serious concerns about how the project's being managed. There have been disputes over technology transfer, disagreements about construction quality, and growing tension over whether India's even following the standards that make Shinkansen trains so safe and reliable. Reports suggest that because of these complications and the massive delays, there's now talk of running India's own Vande Bharat trains on these tracks instead of the actual Japanese bullet train system. Think about that for a second. You spend $17 billion building infrastructure for 320 km/h trains, and you might end up running trains that go half that speed. But here's what they have completed. Over 300 kilometers of elevated viaducts are now standing, massive concrete structures stretching across the landscape. Several stations are in advanced stages of construction, with the architecture looking genuinely impressive. The problem is, an incomplete bullet train corridor is just an expensive monument to ambition. It doesn't move a single passenger. It doesn't generate a rupee of revenue. It just sits there, accumulating interest on those Japanese loans. And this pattern of grand announcements followed by messy reality, it's not unique to the bullet train. It's becoming the signature of India's infrastructure boom. Navi Mumbai International Airport opened in October 2025, and the scale is genuinely breathtaking. Built entirely on reclaimed land, 1,160 hectares of earth moved from hills to fill the sea. 2 parallel runways, each 3.7 kilometers long, capable of handling the world's largest aircraft. The terminal building in Phase 1 alone covers 710,000 square meters. That's bigger than Dubai International's Terminal 3, currently the world's largest. The target capacity is 90 million passengers annually. That's like moving every single person in California, Texas, and New York through one airport every year. The $3.5 billion project makes Mumbai the first Indian city with 2 international airports, and on paper, it solves one of the country's most congested aviation markets. The design includes rainwater harvesting, AI-powered baggage systems, and sustainability features that sound impressive in press releases. But let's talk about what happened just 5 months before this airport opened. June 28, 2024, Delhi's Indira Gandhi International Airport, Terminal 1. Heavy monsoon rains, the roof collapsed. 1 person lost their life. 6 others were injured. This wasn't some old, decrepit structure. This was a terminal at India's busiest airport, handling millions of passengers. And it collapsed during rains, something India experiences every single year. The incident forced the terminal to shut down completely, causing massive disruptions to domestic flights. Investigations revealed issues with structural integrity, questions about whether proper load calculations were done, concerns about the quality of materials used. And here's the chilling part. Before the collapse, there were visible signs of distress. Cracks, water seepage, warning signs that were apparently ignored or not taken seriously enough. Now, the government will tell you these are isolated incidents, random failures that can happen anywhere. But when you start looking at the pattern, it becomes impossible to dismiss. Infrastructure experts have been raising alarms about a systemic problem. India is building faster than ever, but the obsession with speed and scale is creating a quality control crisis. When you're constructing 37 kilometers of highway every day, when you're racing to meet political deadlines, when you're trying to break records, something has to give. And what's giving is the fundamentals: proper soil testing, adequate foundation work, quality materials, rigorous inspections, all the boring, unglamorous stuff that determines whether a structure stands for decades or collapses in months. Bihar, June 2024. In just 20 days, 12 bridges collapsed across the state. Not old British-era bridges, new structures. Some had been standing for less than a year. The Mahisagar River Bridge collapse in Gujarat took 20 lives. The Morbi Suspension Bridge disaster, one of the deadliest infrastructure failures in recent memory, claimed 135 lives when a recently renovated bridge gave way during a festival. The Harang Bridge in Assam collapsed, cutting off entire communities and leaving thousands stranded. Each investigation reveals the same elements: substandard materials, poor construction oversight, corruption in the tendering process, contractors cutting corners, engineers signing off on work that doesn't meet specifications. And it's not just about the immediate tragedy of these collapses, it's about the erosion of trust. When a bridge can't be trusted, people stop using it. When roads develop massive potholes within months of construction, the economic benefits vanish. When flyovers become structural nightmares, like that infamous 90-degree turn flyover in Bhopal that became a national embarrassment, it raises the question of whether anyone's actually thinking through these designs. The human cost is staggering. Hundreds of lives lost. Thousands more living in fear every time they cross a bridge or drive through a tunnel. Families destroyed. Communities cut off. And the economic cost runs into thousands of crores in damages, compensation, and reconstruction. India's $10 billion semiconductor mission sounds like exactly the kind of forward-thinking investment a rising power should make. The logic is solid. Right now, the world depends dangerously on Taiwan, South Korea, and China for chip manufacturing. One geopolitical crisis could cripple the entire global tech industry. India sees the opportunity and they're moving to grab it. 3 major fabrication plants have been approved. Tata Group partnered with Powerchip Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation for a $14 billion facility in Gujarat. CG Power is working with Japan's Renesas and Thailand's Stars Microelectronics on another fab. Micron Technology is building a $2.75 billion assembly and test facility. When these facilities become operational, they'll produce billions of chips annually for everything from smartphones to electric vehicles. India already has a massive advantage. 20% of the world's chip design talent works in India. Engineers designing for Qualcomm, Intel, and Nvidia all have major design centers in Indian cities. The talent is there. The ambition is there. The government backing is there. The goal is to become a top 5 global semiconductor producer by 2030. That's just 5 years away. But here's what semiconductor manufacturing actually requires. It's not enough to have smart engineers and government incentives. You need flawless infrastructure. Chip fabs require absolutely stable power, not 99% stable, not 99.9%. Stable. We're talking 99.999% stable. A single power fluctuation for a fraction of a second can ruin an entire batch of wafers worth millions. India's power grid, despite improvements, still struggles with reliability in many regions. You need ultra-pure water in massive quantities. You need precision climate control. You need logistics so reliable that chemical supplies arrive exactly when needed, every single time. Taiwan didn't become the semiconductor capital of the world just because they had smart engineers. They built an entire ecosystem over decades. Infrastructure that never fails. Supply chains with zero tolerance for disruption. Regulatory systems that move fast but maintain standards. India's trying to compress that timeline dramatically. And while the ambition is admirable, the track record raises serious questions. Can a country that struggles to keep bridges standing reliably manufacture chips that power the world's most critical technology? Can a nation where major infrastructure projects routinely run years behind schedule build an industry where timing is measured in nanoseconds? It's a legitimate question, and the semiconductor companies investing billions are surely asking it too. Gift City in Gujarat was supposed to be India's answer to Singapore, a gleaming financial hub rising from nothing. complete with underground utilities, sensor-managed infrastructure, and regulations designed to attract global capital. And to be fair, parts of it are working. Over 500 companies have set up operations. Major banks like JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and Bank of America have offices there. Tech giants including Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple have a presence. The first phase is complete. Buildings are occupied. People are working. This is real, not vaporware. But Gift City is one city. The government's Smart Cities mission promised 100 cities. The investment committed was Rs 1.64 lakh crore. That's over $20 billion. The vision was transformative. 100 Indian cities becoming models of modern urban planning, efficient services, and sustainable development. The reality has been far messier. A recent assessment found that 50% of India's urban infrastructure is unprepared for disasters, not ready for earthquakes in seismic zones, not designed for the cloudbursts and flooding that climate change is making more frequent, not equipped with early warning systems or emergency response capabilities that modern cities require. The Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor, a $100 billion mega project, promised 24 smart cities along a 1,500-kilometer stretch. The scale is undeniably massive. 6 states, an area larger than Pennsylvania, plans for 180 million people, more than half the population of the United States. The goal was to boost manufacturing from 16% to 25% of India's GDP, adding over $400 billion to the economy annually. Japan is investing. The World Bank is involved. On paper, it's the kind of transformative project that could genuinely make India a manufacturing superpower. But land acquisition has sparked fierce resistance. Farmers in Punjab and Maharashtra have held massive protests, demanding fair compensation and transparency. The deals being cut between government and private developers have raised questions about who really benefits. Cost overruns have become endemic. A comprehensive analysis found Rs 482 lakh crore in cost escalations across 431 major infrastructure projects. That's nearly $60 billion in budget overruns. Projects that were supposed to be financially viable becoming drains on public resources. The opacity around public-private partnerships has eroded trust. When contracts aren't transparent, when land prices seem arbitrary, when displaced communities feel cheated, the entire development model starts to look less like progress and more like exploitation. And here's the fundamental tension. India wants to build at Chinese speeds, but it's a democracy with environmental reviews, land acquisition laws, and public consultation requirements. China built infrastructure by decree. The government said build, and it happened. No protests, no appeals, no delays. India can't and shouldn't work that way. But that means the comparisons to China's infrastructure boom are fundamentally flawed. India needs to figure out how to build fast while still respecting democratic processes and individual rights. So far, the solution has often been to try to shortcut the democratic parts, which creates conflict, delays, and projects that face resistance from the very communities they're supposed to benefit. India's space program is the one area where everything seems to work. Chandrayaan-3 successfully landed near the moon's south pole in August 2023. India became the 4th country ever to land on the moon, and the first to reach that particular region. The mission cost $75 million. NASA's latest Mars mission cost $2.9 billion. India achieved something extraordinary for less than the budget of a Hollywood blockbuster. Gaganyaan, India's first human spaceflight program, is moving forward. By 2027, India plans to send 3 astronauts to low Earth orbit. The spacecraft is being built entirely in India. The rocket, the GSLV Mark III, is Indian-designed and manufactured. This will make India only the 4th country to independently send humans to space, joining the United States, Russia, and China. The ambitions extend further. A space station by 2035. A crewed moon landing by 2040. Development of reusable rocket technology to dramatically cut launch costs. ISRO, India's space agency, operates on a budget of just $1.6 billion per year. NASA's budget is $25 billion, yet India is launching satellites, landing on the moon, and preparing for human spaceflight. The secret is frugal innovation, making world-class technology at a fraction of typical costs, and it's working commercially too. India now launches satellites for over 30 countries. It's become both a space power and a commercial space leader. This positions India as a critical player in a future space economy that could be worth trillions. So why does the space program succeed while terrestrial infrastructure struggles? Part of it is scale. A moon mission, as complex as it is, involves a relatively small team of highly skilled professionals working in a controlled environment. Building 83,000 kilometers of highway involves hundreds of thousands of workers, thousands of contractors, millions of moving parts. Part of it is accountability. A rocket either launches successfully or it fails spectacularly. There's no hiding a failure. A bridge can develop cracks that go unnoticed for months. Substandard concrete can be hidden behind facades. Part of it is simply that ISRO has built a culture of excellence over decades, while the infrastructure sector is often a free-for-all of competing interests, political pressures, and profit motives. Bharatmala is India's largest highway construction program in history. The numbers are almost incomprehensible. 83,607 kilometers of highways being built or upgraded. That's enough to circle the Earth twice. The program includes 44 economic corridors connecting industrial zones, 9,000 kilometers of border roads for security, and 2,000 kilometers of coastal roads connecting ports. India is currently constructing 37 kilometers of highway every single day. That's 23 miles of new highway daily, like building the entire length of Manhattan from tip to tip every day. That adds up to 13,500 kilometers per year. At its peak, China was building 20,000 kilometers per year. India is approaching Chinese speeds in highway construction. The Delhi-Mumbai Expressway, part of Bharatmala, will be India's first 8-lane access-controlled expressway spanning 1,380 kilometers. When complete, you'll drive from Delhi to Mumbai in 12 hours instead of the current 24. It's like cutting a drive from Chicago to Houston in half. The expressway includes 8 major interchanges, 4 railway overpasses, 36 city bypasses, and 9 tunnels. The longest tunnel stretches 3.6 kilometers through mountains in Rajasthan. Total investment in Bharatmala is $108 billion. When complete, the program will reduce logistics costs across India by 20 to 25%. For a country where logistics costs are 14% of GDP, that represents a potential savings of $100 billion annually. Sections are already operational. People are using these roads right now. But here's the problem that nobody wants to address. India is obsessed with construction, not maintenance. Building new highways generates headlines, photo opportunities, and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Maintaining existing highways is boring, unglamorous work that doesn't win elections. The result is predictable. Roads that should last decades develop massive potholes within months. Infrastructure deteriorates faster than it's being built. A study found that maintenance spending is completely inadequate for the infrastructure being created. Within a few years, India will have tens of thousands of kilometers of highways that need major repairs, and the money allocated for maintenance won't come close to covering the need. It's building an asset that will become a liability, and the quality concerns keep surfacing. That 90-degree flyover in Bhopal became such a traffic nightmare and safety hazard that it turned into a national joke. Engineers across the country asked how anyone approved such a design. The Silkyara tunnel collapse in Uttarakhand trapped 41 workers for 17 days in November 2023. Experts had warned about geological instability in the area. The warnings were ignored. The rescue operation itself revealed how unprepared authorities were for such an incident. When the workers were finally brought out, it was through a combination of luck, desperate improvisation, and the bravery of manual laborers who finished the job when machines failed. Between 2021 and 2025, India experienced over 50 major infrastructure failures. The total damages exceeded $5,000 crore. That's over $600 million in direct costs, not counting the economic disruption, the lives lost, or the long-term damage to India's credibility. Each failure followed a similar pattern. Warnings ignored, standards not followed, inspections bypassed, cheap materials substituted, political pressure to meet deadlines. And then, when disaster struck, initial denials followed by investigations that revealed negligence, followed by promises of accountability that rarely materialized. The government will point to overall numbers and say, look at what we're achieving. Infrastructure investment has jumped from 4.5% to over 8% of GDP. That's $250 billion per year going into roads, railways, ports, airports, and digital infrastructure. For context, the United States invests about 2.5% of GDP in infrastructure. India is investing more than 3 times that percentage. India built 10,000 kilometers of highway in 2023 alone. The World Bank projects India will become the world's 3rd largest economy by 2027, overtaking Japan and Germany. And all of that is true. The scale of construction is unprecedented, but scale without quality is just expensive junk. Speed without safety is just disasters waiting to happen. A deeper look at the numbers reveals uncomfortable truths. While the government claims 8% of GDP in infrastructure investment, independent analysis by CRISIL puts the actual figure closer to 4.6%. Where's the discrepancy? Creative accounting. Projects counted multiple times. Announcements confused with actual spending. Private investments that never materialized being included in government statistics. Project delays are endemic. 36% of infrastructure projects are delayed by 25 to 60 months. That's more than a third of all projects running 2 to 5 years behind schedule. The cost of these delays runs into tens of billions. Money tied up in incomplete projects. Interest accumulating. Inflation eroding purchasing. Power. Benefits that were supposed to flow years ago still not materializing. Climate change is exposing the inadequacy of planning. The June 2024 Delhi airport collapse wasn't a freak accident. It was heavy rain, something Delhi gets every monsoon. But structures weren't designed for the intensity of rainfall that climate change is producing. The Srisalem Canal breach in Telangana in July 2024 revealed that even major irrigation projects weren't built to handle the extreme weather events that are becoming routine. Cloudbursts in Himachal Pradesh repeatedly wash away roads that were just rebuilt. Coastal infrastructure faces rising sea levels without adequate planning. Heat waves are buckling roads. The infrastructure being built today is using yesterday's climate data, which means it's already obsolete. Corruption remains the elephant in the room. Every major infrastructure failure reveals some combination of kickbacks, substandard materials, faked tests, bribed inspectors, and political connections protecting incompetent contractors. The tendering process is often rigged. The lowest bidder wins, then immediately starts cutting corners to maintain profit margins. Quality control inspections are rubber stamps. Engineers who raise concerns find themselves transferred or sidelined. The system has structural incentives for corruption. Politicians want to announce projects and cut ribbons before elections. Contractors want to maximize profits. Engineers and inspectors are underpaid and pressured to approve substandard work. And when disaster strikes, accountability is diffused across so many parties that nobody really pays the price. Public apathy is perhaps the most disturbing element. A study found that only 5% of right-to-information applications filed in India are about infrastructure projects. Citizens aren't demanding transparency. They're not holding authorities accountable. Bridges collapse, people die, and within weeks it's forgotten. The news cycle moves on. Another scandal erupts. The same contractors win new projects. The same patterns repeat. There's a collective acceptance that this is just how things work in India. Chalta hai. It keeps going. We'll manage somehow. This acceptance is deadly. It allows the system to continue failing without consequence. So what's the verdict on India's infrastructure revolution? It's a paradox wrapped in contradictions. The ambition is real and genuinely impressive. India is attempting something extraordinary, building at unprecedented scale and speed while maintaining democratic processes. The space program shows what India can achieve when systems work properly. The sheer volume of construction is transforming the physical landscape of the country. Roads that didn't exist 5 years ago now connect remote regions. Airports that didn't exist are handling millions of passengers. The economic impact of functional infrastructure would be enormous. But the reality on the ground is far messier than the glossy presentations suggest. Every success story has a shadow of failure. Every completed project raises questions about how many shortcuts were taken. Every ambitious announcement comes with the baggage of past projects that never materialized or failed catastrophically. The infrastructure revolution is real, but it's being built on shaky foundations, literally and metaphorically. Substandard materials, inadequate planning, ignored warnings, systemic corruption, insufficient maintenance, climate change impacts not factored in, quality sacrificed for quantity, speed prioritized over safety. The 2030 goals the government has set are incredibly ambitious, becoming the world's third largest economy, being a top 5 semiconductor producer, having high-speed rail connecting major cities, smart cities across the country, world-class ports and airports, manufacturing capability rivaling China. All of it requires infrastructure that not only gets built, but actually works reliably for decades. And that's where the house of cards metaphor becomes uncomfortably apt. If the foundations aren't solid, if quality control remains inadequate, if the patterns of failure continue, then India isn't building a superpower infrastructure. It's building a massive maintenance crisis waiting to happen. The race against time is intense. India's demographic dividend, the massive young population that could drive economic growth, won't last forever. The window to become a developed nation before population aging sets in is limited. Infrastructure is supposed to be the enabler, the foundation that allows everything else to flourish. But if that foundation is cracked, if bridges can't be trusted, if power supply is unreliable, if airports have collapsing roofs, then the economic transformation everyone's counting on becomes much harder to achieve. The world is watching India's infrastructure revolution with a mix of admiration and concern. Admiration for the ambition, the scale, the determination to build despite enormous challenges. Concern about whether it's sustainable, whether the quality will hold up, whether India is moving too fast without adequate safeguards. What's being built is impressive. What's actually working reliably is a smaller list. And the gap between the two is where the truth of India's infrastructure revolution really lies. Not in the glossy videos and record-breaking announcements, but in the bridges that collapse, the warnings that get ignored, the corners that get cut, and the price that ordinary people pay when infrastructure fails. That's the story nobody wants to talk about, but it's the story that will determine whether India's infrastructure revolution succeeds or becomes a cautionary tale about ambition without execution, speed without safety, and scale without substance.